In China, the future does not only exist on blueprints. It is being poured in concrete, welded in steel, and stretched across canyons so deep the rivers below look like threads of silver. There is a place where a highway hangs higher than the clouds, where a train slides straight through a family's apartment building, where an entire luxury hotel was built downward into a flooded quarry pit. There are bridges taller than the Empire State Building, telescopes wide enough to swallow a small town, and floating turbines that stand against super typhoons like an army planted in the sea. None of this is computer animation. All of it is real, and much of it opened only in the last few years. Join us as we travel across China to witness the impossible structures being built in the most unreal places on Earth. Number 1. Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge, Guizhou. Our journey begins in the mountains of Guizhou, in southwestern China, above a canyon so vast it seems to belong to another planet. Here stands the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge, and when it opened to traffic on the 28th of September 2025, it instantly became the tallest bridge ever built by human hands. From the surface of the road to the river far below, the drop measures 625 meters. That is more than 2,000 feet of empty air. It is taller than the Empire State Building, and it dwarfs France's Millau Viaduct, the previous European giant, which reaches only 343 meters. To build across a gorge this wide, engineers strung a central span of 1,420 meters between two towers, using 22,000 tons of steel, roughly the weight of 3 Eiffel Towers suspended in the sky. The hardest part was the wind. At these heights, gusts tear through the canyon with brutal force, so the deck was designed as a steel truss suspension structure, strong enough to hold the load yet flexible enough to breathe with the storm. The reward is almost impossible to believe. A journey that once took 2 hours of white-knuckle mountain switchbacks now takes about 2 minutes. Within months of opening, more than 2 million tourists had arrived to walk a glass floor slung beneath the deck, to ride a glass elevator up a tower to a sky cafe, and to leap from what is billed as the highest bungee jump in the world. Would you drive across a road hanging higher than a skyscraper? Or would your hands freeze on the wheel before you reached the other side? Number 2. Shenzhen-Zhongshan Link, Guangdong. From a canyon in the mountains, we travel east to the coast, where China attempted something engineers once thought belonged only to science fiction. The Shenzhen-Zhongshan Link is often described as a space station laid across the water, because it does not simply cross the Pearl River estuary. It conquers both the sky and the seafloor at once. Stretching about 24 kilometers, it weaves together soaring bridges, 2 artificial islands, and an underwater tunnel that dives beneath one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. The challenge was impossible on its face. Ships had to keep sailing above, so the crossing could not be a bridge the whole way. Instead, engineers sank a massive undersea tunnel made of enormous concrete tubes, each one longer than a football field and heavier than an aircraft carrier, then lowered them into a trench on the seabed and joined them with millimeter precision underwater. When it opened, a journey that once took 2 hours around the bay collapsed to about 30 minutes. 2 artificial islands rise from the water where the bridge sections meet the tunnel. Man-made land conjured out of the sea, purely so cars could dip below the waves and climb back into the daylight. Number 3. Liziba Station. Chongqing leaving the coast behind, we head inland to a crowded mountain city where a structure hides in plain sight so strange that visitors travel across the world just to watch it work. In Chongqing, home to millions, there is a light rail station called Liziba, and its trains do something that stops people mid-sentence. The train runs directly through a 19-story residential apartment building. It enters on one side, passes through a dedicated hollow floor built into the tower, stops to let passengers on and off, and exits the other side, all while families live in the apartments above and below. Chongqing is a city crammed between rivers and steep hills, with almost no flat ground to spare. So instead of tearing the building down to lay the track, engineers designed the tower and the railway together. The train and the residents share the same structure. Noise-dampening technology keeps the sound inside the transit floor no louder than a dishwasher, so the people living just meters away barely notice the trains sliding through their home every few minutes. It is the sound of a city that ran out of room and decided to build in the only direction left, straight through itself. Number 4. Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge, Hunan. From a train that shares a home with families, we move to the edge of a canyon 300 meters deep to a structure built for one purpose only, to let human beings stand on nothing but air and glass. In the surreal pillar forest of Zhangjiajie, the same landscape that inspired floating mountains in film, engineers hung a glass bridge across the gorge. The Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge stretches around 430 meters from cliff to cliff, its walkway made almost entirely of transparent glass panels. Standing in the center, you can look straight down through the floor into the gorge far below, with only a thin layer of glass between your feet and the abyss. To prove it was safe, the builders once invited people to smash the surface with sledgehammers and even drive a car across it, and the glass held. Yet, knowing it is safe does almost nothing to calm the body when you step out over empty space. Many visitors freeze halfway across, clinging to the railing, caught between the urge to see the view and the primal fear of the drop. Would you walk to the middle and look down, or would your legs refuse to move? Number 5. Shanghai Maglev. Shanghai, if standing on glass tests your nerve, our next stop tests your sense of speed. The Shanghai Maglev is the fastest commercial train in the world, using magnetic levitation to lift the train slightly off the track so it floats on a cushion of magnetic force, touching nothing at all. With no friction from wheels, it accelerates to a top speed of 431 kilometers per hour, covering the 30-kilometer trip from the city to Pudong Airport in about 7.5 minutes. Standing on the platform, you feel it before you see it. A low hum, a rush of air, and then a silver shape that arrives and departs almost faster than the eye can follow. Because the train never physically touches the guideway at speed, there is almost nothing to wear out and nothing to grind. It is a glimpse of a future where trains do not roll. They fly just inches above the ground. Number 6. Duge Bridge. Guizhou's speed on the ground gives way once more to structures that conquer the sky. Back in the mountains of Guizhou stands the bridge that once held the crown. The Duge Bridge, sometimes called the Beipanjiang Bridge, rises 565 meters above the Beipan River, and until Huajiang was finished, it was the highest bridge on Earth. From below, its cables vanish into the mist, and cars crossing the top look like tiny beads sliding along a thread. This bridge connects the provinces of Yunnan and Guizhou, cutting a trip that used to take more than 4 hours down to less than 1. Before it existed, entire communities in these mountains were sealed off from one another by the sheer geography of the land. Canyons too deep to cross, slopes too steep to climb. Guizhou is now home to nearly half of the 100 highest bridges in the world, a province that turned its own impossible terrain into a proving ground for engineering. The Duge Bridge is proof of a simple idea taken to its extreme. If the mountains will not move, then build straight over them. Number 7. Sheraton Huzhou Hot Spring Resort, Zhejiang. From a canyon crossing, we moved to the edge of a calm lake, where water inspired one of the strangest buildings in the country. In the city of Huzhou sits the Sheraton Huzhou Hot Spring Resort, a hotel shaped like a gigantic ring rising directly out of a lake. Locals call it the Horseshoe, or simply the Ring Building, and at night, when its lights reflect on the still water, the illuminated circle and its mirror image join to form a glowing figure that seems to float on the surface. Building a ring-shaped tower on the edge of a lake was an engineering puzzle in itself. The curved structure had to be perfectly balanced, its foundations driven deep into soft, waterlogged ground to keep the enormous loop from twisting or sinking. There are no straight edges to hide behind in a design like this. Every beam curves, every floor bends around the arc. The finished building looks less like architecture and more like a portal standing at the water's edge, a shape that has no business being that large or that stable, and yet there it is. Number 8. Qinghai-Tibet Railway, Tibetan Plateau. Leaving the lake behind, we climb to the roof of the world. The Qinghai-Tibet Railway is the highest railway ever constructed, reaching an altitude of over 5,000 meters as it crosses the Tibetan Plateau. At these heights, the air holds so little oxygen that carriages must be sealed and pressurized like an aircraft, with oxygen pumped in for passengers who would otherwise struggle to breathe. But the true enemy was the ground itself. Much of the track was laid across permafrost, soil that stays frozen for most of the year but softens in summer, threatening to buckle and swallow the rails. To defeat it, engineers built sections of the line on elevated bridges and installed cooling systems that keep the earth frozen year-round, using pipes filled with liquid that draw heat out of the ground. The railway threads through a landscape of glaciers, wild yaks, and passes so high that clouds drift below the windows. It connected Tibet to the rest of China's rail network for the first time in history, crossing terrain that had defeated engineers for a century. Number 9. Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, Pearl River Delta. From the highest railway on Earth, we drop back down to sea level, to the longest sea crossing ever built. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge stretches an astonishing 55 kilometers across the open water of the Pearl River Delta, linking 3 cities in a single sweeping arc of bridges, artificial islands, and a deep undersea tunnel. To let giant container ships pass overhead, part of the route plunges beneath the sea, threading through a tunnel more than 6 kilometers long, connected by 2 artificial islands, built from nothing. The waters here are among the busiest and most environmentally sensitive in the world, home to rare pink dolphins, so construction had to be carefully managed to protect them. Engineers prefabricated enormous sections on land and floated them into place, assembling the crossing like the pieces of a colossal model. The bridge was built to withstand powerful typhoons, major earthquakes, and even the impact of a supersized cargo ship. What was once a 4-hour journey around the delta now takes about 45 minutes across the water. Number 10. Beijing Daxing International Airport. Beijing. Some structures are so large they can only be fully understood from the sky. In the capital, Beijing Daxing International Airport, which opened in 2019, is one of the largest single-terminal airports in the world, and from above it looks like a golden starfish sprawled across the ground. Its terminal covers a floor area of around 700,000 square meters, yet it was designed so that no passenger has to walk more than about 8 minutes from the central hub to any boarding gate. 5 long arms radiate out from the center, spreading the gates in every direction to keep walking distances short. Beneath the terminal, high-speed trains and subway lines run directly into the building, so travelers can step off a bullet train and be inside the airport within moments. The vast curving roof is held up by only a handful of enormous C-shaped columns, opening the interior into a flood of natural light with almost no walls to break it up. It was built in just a few years to relieve the crushing pressure on Beijing's older airport, and it stands as a monument to what happens when engineering, scale, and speed are pushed at the same time. Number 11. Ruyi Bridge, Zhejiang. From a terminal shaped like a starfish, we return to the mountains and to glass that refuses to run in a straight line. In the Shenzhen-Zhongshan scenic area of Zhejiang province stands the Ruyi Bridge, and it does not follow a simple line. It curves and waves through the air in 3 sweeping arcs, more than 140 meters above the valley, shaped like an ancient Chinese scepter called a ruyi. From the side, the bridge appears to ripple across the sky like a ribbon frozen in motion. Building a curved glass walkway suspended this high was far harder than a straight span, because the forces pulling on a bending structure are uneven and complex, demanding a support system hidden beneath the transparent deck. Walking it feels like stepping onto a wave that has turned to glass, the ground curving away beneath you as clouds drift through the gorge below. It is engineering pretending to be art, and art pretending to defy gravity. Number 12. Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge. Jiangsu. If a curving glass walkway bends the mind, the next structure stretches it across an entire landscape. The Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge is the longest bridge on the planet, carrying high-speed trains for an almost unbelievable 164 kilometers. Longer than the distance a car could drive in 2 hours on an open highway. Rather than laying track across the soft, waterlogged plains and rice paddies of the Yangtze Delta, where the ground could shift and flood, engineers lifted the entire railway onto a continuous viaduct held up by thousands of concrete piers. The bridge crosses rivers, lakes, canals, and even runs for miles across the edge of a large lake, all on a raised deck that keeps the trains perfectly level and stable. Building a structure this long demanded tens of thousands of support columns and years of relentless work, but the payoff is a rail line that glides above the wet landscape instead of fighting it. From the window of a passing train, the ground simply disappears, replaced by an endless ribbon of concrete floating above the water. Number 13. Shimo Wonderland, Shanghai. Not every record is about length or height. Some structures were built by refusing to accept the shape of the land. On the outskirts of Shanghai lies the Shimo Wonderland, a luxury hotel that did not rise into the sky. It descended into the earth. Built inside an abandoned, water-filled quarry pit, the hotel plunges 88 meters down the sheer rock face, with most of its floors clinging to the cliff below ground level and 2 floors sitting entirely underwater. Home to an aquarium and rooms that look out into the depths. For decades, this pit was an industrial scar, a hole gouged out of the ground and left to flood. Rather than fill it in, architects treated the wound as a foundation. The greatest challenge was engineering a building to survive inside a pit prone to flooding and rockfalls, so the structure was designed to flex during earthquakes and to channel water safely away from the guest floors. Guests now take an elevator down instead of up, descending past waterfalls that tumble down the quarry wall. It is a hotel that turned a discarded scar in the earth into one of the most unusual addresses in the world. Number 14. Aizhai Bridge, Hunan. From a hotel buried in a pit, we return to the mountains, to a bridge that had to grow out of the rock itself. On the border of Hunan province stands the Aizhai Bridge, a suspension bridge that hangs 1,080 feet above a valley floor, connecting 2 tunnels bored directly into opposing cliffs. Traffic emerges from the heart of one mountain, races across open air, and disappears into the heart of the next. There was no room for traditional approach roads here, no gentle slope to ease onto the deck, so engineers anchored the entire structure between the rock faces themselves. During construction, workers used a remote-controlled system to pull the first cables across the gorge because the drop was simply too deep and too dangerous to cross any other way. The bridge shortened a treacherous mountain passage from around 30 minutes of hairpin turns to roughly 1 minute. For the people of this region, it is not a tourist attraction. It is the difference between isolation and the outside world. Number 15. Fast Telescope, Guizhou. Some of China's most staggering structures were not built for travel at all, but to listen to the universe itself. Deep in a natural bowl-shaped valley in Guizhou sits FAST, the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope, the largest single-dish radio telescope on Earth. Its reflecting surface spans 500 meters across, wide enough to hold 30 football fields, and is made of thousands of individual aluminum panels that can tilt and shift to aim the dish at different corners of the sky. To build something this enormous, engineers searched for years to find a natural depression in the landscape, shaped almost perfectly to cradle the dish, then suspended a receiver cabin weighing many tons on cables high above the surface, able to move with pinpoint accuracy. The telescope is so sensitive that an entire zone around it must be kept radio silent. Nearby residents were relocated and electronic devices restricted because even a mobile phone could drown out the faint whispers it is trying to catch from billions of light years away. FAST has already discovered hundreds of new pulsars, distant, collapsed stars, listening to signals that left their source before the Earth was even formed. Number 16. Fuzhou-Xiamen High-Speed Railway, Fujian. From an ear pointed at the stars, we return to Earth and to the sea, where bullet trains were sent racing over open water for the first time. Along the coast of Fujian Province runs the Fuzhou-Xiamen High-Speed Railway, the first line in the country built to send trains directly over the ocean. Trains here cross long spans of water at speeds that turn the coastline into a blur, gliding across bays on bridges engineered to withstand salt corrosion, powerful ocean winds, and the constant threat of typhoons. Building high-speed rail on solid ground is difficult enough. Doing it across seawater, where every support must be driven into the seabed and protected against a hostile marine environment, pushed the technology into new territory. The result is a train that appears, to anyone watching from the shore, to be flying just above the waves. It slashed travel times between major coastal cities from hours to minutes, knitting the entire Fujian coast into a single, fast-moving corridor. Number 17. Shanghai Tower. Shanghai back on land, China builds upward, and when it does, it sets records. The Shanghai Tower spirals more than 630 meters into the sky, making it the tallest building in China and one of the tallest on the planet. But its most remarkable feature is its shape. The entire tower twists as it rises, rotating roughly 120 degrees from base to crown. This is not an artistic flourish. The twist reduces the wind load on the building by nearly a quarter, allowing it to stand firm against the powerful typhoon winds that batter the city. A double layer of glass wraps the whole structure like a transparent skin, creating sky gardens in the gap between the inner and outer walls. Inside, the elevators are among the fastest in the world, rocketing passengers upward at around 20 meters per second, fast enough to reach the observation deck near the top in under a minute. To ride it is to feel the future pull you into the clouds. Number 18. Three Gorges Ship Lift, Hubei. From the tallest tower in the country to one of its strangest machines, a device built to lift a 3,000-ton ship over a wall. At the Three Gorges Dam, the largest hydroelectric structure in the world, there is a ship elevator that seems to break the laws of common sense. Rather than sailing through a long series of locks, which can take hours, vessels weighing up to 3,000 tons sail into an enormous steel basin filled with water. Then, the entire basin, ship and water together, is lifted vertically more than 100 meters up or down the face of the dam, like an elevator carrying a small building full of liquid. The precision required is staggering. The water level inside the basin must be controlled exactly, and the whole system counterbalanced so that a ship can be raised the height of a 30-story building in under an hour. Watching a fully loaded vessel rise smoothly up the side of the dam, floating in its own private pool of water, is one of those sights that makes the brain refuse to accept what the eyes are reporting. Number 19. 1,000 trees. Shanghai, not far from the dam's raw power, we return to the heart of Shanghai, where a structure blurred the line between building and landscape. It is called 1,000 trees, and from a distance, it does not look like a building at all. It looks like a pair of green mountains that have grown up out of the city. Hundreds of massive structural columns rise from the complex, and the top of each column is crowned with a planter, so that more than 1,000 trees and tens of thousands of plants cover the terraced roofs and ledges. The engineering demand was severe. Each of those tree-topped columns had to bear the enormous weight of soil, water, and mature trees, all while supporting the floors of shops and galleries beneath. The columns are not decoration. They are the skeleton of the entire complex, doubling as load-bearing supports and as gigantic planters. The result is a piece of the city that changes color with the seasons, a man-made hillside dropped into an urban district, proof that a building can be engineered to look like something nature took 1,000 years to grow. Number 20. Rudong Offshore Wind Farms. Jiangsu. Our journey ends far out at sea, off the coast of Jiangsu province, in a place where humans planted a forest that grows electricity instead of leaves. The Rudong offshore wind farms stand in the open ocean, hundreds of white turbines rising from the waves in orderly rows, their blades sweeping through the sea wind day and night. Each turbine is a colossus, with towers rising well over 100 meters and blades stretching nearly the length of a football field, anchored into the seabed to stand firm against the crushing force of the water. The greatest test was the weather. This coast lies in the path of powerful typhoons, so the foundations of each turbine, some weighing thousands of tons, had to be driven deep into the shifting seabed and engineered to survive storms that would flatten anything weaker. Cables run beneath the ocean floor, carrying the power these turbines generate back to the mainland to light up millions of homes. Seen from above, they look like an army of guardians standing in the sea, unmoving as the waves crash around them, turning the raw fury of the ocean wind into clean, endless energy. From a bridge taller than any skyscraper to a telescope that listens to dead stars, from a train that slips through a family's home to a hotel buried in a flooded pit, China is building the future in the places most people would call impossible. These are not fantasies drawn by an artist. They are steel and concrete and glass, standing today in canyons, oceans, deserts, and city streets, each one the answer to a question that began with the words, "What if it cannot be done?" If you enjoyed this journey through the impossible, let us know in the comments which of these structures amazed you the most, and subscribe to see where human ambition takes us next. Because somewhere in China, right now, the next impossible thing is already rising from the ground.